All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome again to 8 Tips for a High IELTS Speaking Score, a presentation of Avant English program. Thank you for attending wherever you are out there in the world, and thanks for participating in our poll question today. To get started, what is your level of natural English? And I'm going to go ahead and close the poll, but at this time, from the answers of high, medium, and low, 88% say, 78% say a medium level, 11% say a high level of English, and also 11% say a low level of natural English. And there's a good reason why I asked the question about natural English. That is one of the keys to, just success on the IELTS test overall. Yes, on the speaking section, but also widely across the exam. The higher level of natural English that you have, the more confident you are, and the more confident you are, the higher level of an IELTS score you receive as well. So let's go ahead and look at these 8 tips for a high IELTS speaking score. So number 1, you want to be direct on the test when you're answering the speaking questions. You also, of course, want to manage your time wisely, specifically in part 2 of the IELTS speaking test. Enhance your 3 IELTS vocabularies. If you've attended one of the earlier webinars that I held, I talked about the 3 IELTS vocabularies. We're going to review them today as well. And number 4, practice the 2-minute drill. This is vitally important during your IELTS preparation. When you're concentrating on the speaking section, that you practice the 2-minute drill for the part 2 question, and have some tips for that as well. Number 5, take full advantage of the 1-minute preparation time you have for the part 2 question. And we're going to talk about that as well, some hints to help you to maximize the 1-minute time that you're allowed before you make your 2-minute speech in the part 2 section. Evoke the senses with vivid descriptions. This is for all 3 parts of the speaking test. Ad lib if you have no idea of what to say. There's no way to predict, of course, the questions you're going to get on the IELTS speaking exam or writing exam or any other parts of the test. But you are in control of your responses. This goes for the writing test, but also for the speaking test. You can ad lib if you do not have an idea of what to say in response to a question. And we're going to talk about what ad libbing actually is. And finally, work with a strong English speaker. That is, build up your natural English throughout your entire IELTS preparation time. Talk with friends and practice the IELTS so that you're able to build up your level of natural English. As I said, this is the key to success on the IELTS exam overall. Okay. All right. Now, let's go ahead and get started with our first lesson here, to be direct. This also is pertinent or relevant to your responses on the written test as well. If you Do not answer the question. Remember, answering the question is the #1 grading criteria for the speaking test and for the writing test. And if you do not get to your point, and you know you're under limited time to respond, even in parts 1 and 3, they're not the IELTS examiner is not going to give you a whole amount of time to get to your point to answer the question. If you do not answer the question, then they're going to think that you do not understand the question and that your English level is not high enough to understand the question. And therefore, they're going to give you lower marks. So you want to be able to directly answer the question that they ask you. So answer the question fully. Give the why plus examples. So you're going to not only say, well, I think the sky is blue, you're going to say, I think the sky is blue because, right? You always want to give that reason why, the because, and throw in examples as well to help illustrate your point. Make the most of your limited time and say the most with the least words. All right, point number 2, manage your time wisely. Your performance in part 2 determines your score. It's the most complicated part of the IELTS speaking test. You have to you have your 1-minute preparation, you have to organize your thoughts, and you have to deliver a response that directly is responsive to the question that they ask you. So given the complexity of part 2, it is going to influence heavily your final result on the speaking test. So answer the question fully, give the why examples, maximize your 1 minute, and then you want to organize your speech to fit the 2 minutes. And we're going to talk more about that in depth in a few minutes. How you can maximize that 1 minute time and how you can organize your speech to fit the 2 minutes. So, of course, manage your time wisely. And this is something you can do when you're practicing at home for the exam, is to set a stopwatch for the 2 minutes and see how much you can answer the question or speak in those 2 minutes. And maybe you need to speak a little faster. Maybe you need to think a bit faster as well. But this is something that you can practice at home before the exam. Number 3, enhance your 3 vocabularies. So you want to make word study a big part of your IELTS preparation. I am a little biased because I love vocabulary and discovering new words. And remember, the best way to discover new words is to read widely in English. Let's take a look at some tips here. So you want to read extensively or read widely, and you want to record any new terms or phrases you come across in a vocabulary notebook so you can capture those words. Remember, it takes 7 times seeing a new word before you remember it. So you need to capture your new vocabulary term, and then you need to review it until you understand it and can use it in your own way. So the 3 vocabularies, as I said, I had a webinar about this probably a couple weeks ago, definitely last month, about the regular words of vocabulary, like the word adept, which means skillful, the collocations, idioms, and phrasal verbs, which I refer to as CIP, and then, of course, topic vocabulary. And those of you who receive the IELTS Corner every Thursday, you know that I include a vocabulary file in each of the IELTS Corners. And each of those vocabulary files are about topic vocabulary. And each of those gives you verbs, nouns, and adjectives, and CIP, collocations, idioms, and phrasal verbs around that topic. And when you're on the IELTS speaking exam, you want to use this topical vocabulary as much as possible and show the IELTS examiner your range of vocabulary, and also that you know that you can talk about these topics with confidence. This is a long-term process. This is not something that you can do in a week or 2 weeks. Increasing your vocabulary is a lifelong adventure when you're learning a new language or perfecting another language that you are interested in. So this is why it's important to begin immediately. When you know that you're going to take one of these standardized tests, like the IELTS or TOEFL exam, you want to begin vocabulary study. And one of the best ways is to read, and also know that you need to focus on these 3 vocabularies. You could watch YouTube videos. As you know, if you visited the Avant English or YouTube channel, I've created several playlists of YouTube videos of vocabulary terms, and this topical vocabulary that I was talking about, like healthcare, education, the environment, sometimes government affairs, technology, career, work. There are many videos on YouTube devoted to these topics, and they have great vocabulary that you can study just by watching a video, which makes it very convenient for you. YouTube in general is a great resource, a treasure for those who are learning a language and those who are preparing for the IELTS exam. And finally, you want to review your vocabulary terms. As I said, you need to see each word about 7 times before you recognize it and be able to use it and learn and know how to use it in a sentence. So this is why it's important to capture your vocabulary terms in a notebook or some other way that's easy for you to review your vocabulary. If you go to Quizlet.com, Quizlet.com, you can create an account there and start inputting your own electronic files, these electronic cards that you can have for vocabulary review. And also, you can go there and look over the list of vocabulary terms that other people have created. So it's a collaborative effort on this website. And it's been around a long time, and I believe there's also an app as well. Doesn't everyone have an application? And so that's Quizlet.com. It's a good way to enhance your vocabulary by studying vocabulary from other people and your own list of vocabulary as well. So make word study a big part of your IELTS preparation. Number 4, practice the 2-minute drill. Respect the time limits of the speaking exam. So when you're at home, you definitely want to practice the 2-minute drill, setting up your own time either on your smartphone or tablet, and respecting that time. So when the alarm goes off, that you stop and that you do not continue, because you're not going to be allowed to continue on the test. And this kind of gives you an indication of where you are in your practice in part 2. So let's take a look at some hints here. So if you can, work with a partner. You're already nervous enough trying to fiddle with smartphone, a tablet, and trying to set the time up and record yourself, which is what you should do. Make sure you record your 2-minute practice so you can replay it and see how you were speaking Were you speaking too quickly? Not fast enough? So if you can work with a partner, even better. And they can also be there to encourage you. As I said, set your time on a smartphone or tablet and record your speech. As I said, it's always better to be nervous at home so you're not nervous later on the test. And it's normal. Most people do not want to have their voice recorded if you're not a professional singer or broadcaster or people that are in the public light that are always speaking and hear themselves. It's kind of strange sometimes to hear yourself. But recording your speech is one of the best things you can do, especially if you're practicing alone, but also when you're practicing with a partner as well. Adjust your delivery time to fit the 2 minutes. As I said, when you're practicing the 2-minute drill, you want to know at what point, if you did not finish on time, where were you in your delivery? Were you 2 sentences away? Were you in the middle of your delivery? Or were you still stuck at the beginning of the delivery? This is where having the stopwatch helps you. So you can get a better idea of what you need to do to modify your delivery, to change it so it fits within the 2 minutes. And finally, of course, organization. Organization is a big part of fitting your delivery of your speech into the 2-minute window that you're allowed. We're going to talk more about how to organize your speech in a couple of minutes. But a lot of times, the reason why folks are not able to deliver their speech in the part 2 speaking section in the 2 minutes is because it's a little bit disorganized. And if it's disorganized, you're going to take up more time than it's allowed, and that's one reason why you're not going to finish on time. And it's essential that you finish on time on the 2-minute drill, that you do not want the IELTS examiner to stop you. You want to be able to stop yourself. Say what you want to say and end your speech. If you practice well with the 2-minute drill at home, then you should be able to deliver it on time. And when you stop your speech, you should be pretty close to that 2-minute limit. Number 5, take full advantage of the 1-minute prep time. So here are 4 steps to help you maximize that 1 minute, it's a very short time, to prepare for your 2-minute speech. So first, you want to divide up the questions, and we're going to take a look at this in a few seconds. You want to draw up a T and then add your own answers into that grid. We're going to show you that in a couple seconds. Organize your delivery, as we've talked about already, and create your strong first statement. We're also going to take a look at that very shortly. So let's look at an example of a part 2 question, and let's apply these 4 steps. All right, we're going to go step by step here. So divide up the questions. So here's a typical question from part 2, right? This is talking about part 2. Divide up the question. Describe a performance you have watched and say, where was it? What kind of performance was it? And what did you like most about it? All right. So how can you divide up this question? So as you look at the question here, when I reveal it, I'm going to put it like a little red space across, red dots across here to divide up the question. Remember the old adage, divide and conquer. The same thing for the IELTS Speaking Part 2 question. If you try to take it all together, you're going to be probably overwhelmed, especially given the small amount of time you have to respond to the question. So you need to divide up the question, and we're going to show you how to further divide that as well. So let's go ahead and look here. All right. So notice the here in the red where I divided up the question. These two questions here are rather together, right? Where was the performance and what kind of performance was it? So those questions could be answered together. And then you would spend the remainder of your time to talk about, well, what did you like most about it? What did you like most about it? So this would be the division of the question, of the IELTS question. And if you can try to keep these two halves separated in your mind, then it's going to make it easier for you to respond to the questions, and also not to have a feeling of being overwhelmed by the questions. Remember, they can ask you 3 or maybe even 4 questions. In this case, we have a 3-question prompt, but there could be 4 questions as well to answer, and they may not be in the right order on purpose that you need to be able to answer the question. So you're going to have to review the question thoroughly and then look and see where you can split your speech in 2 parts. That's going to help you to be able to deliver an effective response. So beyond dividing up the questions, to help you organize the delivery of your response, you want to draw up a T. All right. Now, this is using, of course, PowerPoint here. So it's going to look like 4 boxes. And essentially, it is 4 boxes. But remember, you're going to have scratch sheet of paper and a pen or pencil. And you can use that to draw your own T. And the T is going to have these 4 quadrants, right? It's going to have 4 quadrants. And you want to divide up, this is during your 1-minute preparation, to divide up the question into the T and put the different questions in a different quadrant or in a different box. So for example, for the question that we have here, notice I have the where and what together here, which is divided here. In the left side of your T, and then what did you like most about it? I divided it here on the right side of the T. And so this helps you to quickly not only to divide up your answer, but to further subdivide it into smaller parts so that you can use your scratch sheet if you need to during your delivery to stay on track, to remember what you need to say to answer the question. Remember, you can refer to your scratch sheet of paper during your response. You just can't read from the paper. It's a big difference. So you're not going to really have time to write much anyway in the 1 minute, except quick answers to each of these questions and to divide them up into these boxes here so that you know what to say in the middle of your delivery. And if you ever lose your train of thought, you can always refer to your scratch sheet of paper with your T, and you'll know what you need to speak about next. So drawing the T helps you to organize your answers for the delivery. And remember, you can refer to your sheet of paper during your delivery to keep you on track. Now, remember, part 2 is about telling a story. And I always ask my own students, are you a good storyteller? And most people say they're not a good storyteller. Maybe they're not a good storyteller in English. But you need to be a good enough English storyteller to get a great score on the Part 2 test, Part 2 of the IELTS speaking exam. Because it's all about telling a story. And remember, you have the IELTS examiner right in front of you. So you are telling a story right to a person. And they can only be impressed by the story that you deliver. Now, officially, they're supposed to not be impressed by your charisma or how you speak or whatever, but they're only human as well. And the more interesting you make the story, the more compelling the story is, the fuller response that you give, and how that you deliver your answer to each of the parts of the question that are asked, the higher your score is going to be. So let's take a look at dividing up the prompt we were just looking at into a beginning, a middle, and an end. So not only do you divide up the questions from the IELTS people that they give you, you need to be able to insert those questions into different parts of your story. Let's take a look here. So every story, of course, has to have a beginning and a middle, and finally an end. Now the end is basically just a summing up, a summation of what you've already said. And you want to be able to use at least the discourse marker finally, or in sum, in conclusion. Really, finally is just fine for the speaking section. But you want to have that last discourse marker telling the IELTS examiner that you're ending your story by saying finally. And remember, it's only like a line or two. So most of the action takes place in the beginning and in the middle part of your response. The beginning and middle part of your response. So in the beginning, you could have here describe the performance, where was it, and what kind of performance was it? All right. So you would maybe need, well, we're going to look at the strong first statement next, but you want to tell us certain information right from the beginning so that the IELTS examiner knows what your story is about and where you're going with your story. That is the big role of the beginning of your story. And if you have a strong beginning, you're going to have a much more successful delivery of your 2-minute speech. It's very similar to the introduction paragraph of your IELTS essay. If you have a strong IELTS introductory paragraph, then you're going to be able to write the rest of your essay. If you have a strong beginning to your story in part 2, that's going to help carry you to the rest of your delivery of your speech that you're going to give. Now, in the middle, what did you like most about it? All right. So in the middle, this is where you are developing your story. You take the themes that you've introduced in the beginning and you amplify them in the middle. And you want to always give us reasons and examples. Reasons and examples. So what did you like most about the performance? You're going to have to tell us what you like most about it and give us an example of that. Always remember reason and example. Same thing for the IELTS essay, reason and example. This is your full response. As we talked about earlier, giving a full response is going to boost your IELTS speaking score. And then, as I said, finally, at the end, you're just summing up what you've said above. 1 or 2 sentences and you're finished. And that should be very close to the 2-minute mark. All right. So tell your story, divide it up into 3 parts, and you should be able to deliver a full response in the 2 minutes allowed. Now, another part of the maximizing the 1 minute prep time is what I call your strong first statement. This is what I teach in my own classes for the students to think about. What is your strong first statement? As you know, as expressions go, you want to start strong and finish strong. You want to have right from the beginning to be able to capture the attention of the IELTS examiner, show them that you know a wide range of English and that you're able to answer the questions effortlessly with no strain at all. And that is very possible with a strong first statement. Consider it kind of like your thesis statement, a little mini thesis statement, again, alluding back to the introduction paragraph on the writing section. You want to start off telling the examiner the basic parameters of what you're going to be talking about, the basic ingredients of your story, so you can prepare them for what you're going to say. So here is our question again. We're talking about a performance that you watched, and where was it, and what kind of performance was it? This should be in your strong first statement. This dividing line here, this is going to basically be the elements that you need to be able to answer in your strong first statement. And you knock out these original questions quickly. And that leaves more time to develop your response to the last question or questions that they ask you. In our example, what did you like most about it? So that would be what we spend the remainder of the time answering in our response. So let's go ahead and look at a strong first statement in response to these questions. The Bolshoi Ballet dazzled a packed house with its rendering of The Nutcracker last December at the Metropolitan Theater. So this question answers, what was the performance? Well, it was the Bolshoi Ballet rendering The Nutcracker. Where was it? It was at the Metropolitan Theater. And what kind of performance was it, or when was it? It was last December, which is a good detail to add into to make your statement even stronger. So we now know what you're going to be talking about. You're going to be talking about the ballet of the Nutcracker at the Metropolitan Theater. So here is a strong first statement, and it gives a full answer to the questions that have been asked. And now you're going to be able to talk about, what did you like most about this performance at the Metropolitan Theater last December? And you have the rest of your time now to talk about what you liked about the performance and develop your answer and heading down toward the end of your story. But it really all begins with this strong first statement. You answer as many questions as you can so that it leaves only a couple of questions left, or in this case, only one question left, and you can spend the rest of your time developing your response to that question because you've already answered the other questions. You can take a relief, whew, it's done. That part is done. Now all I have to do is develop my responses. Develop my responses to the what did you like most about it? And then you're halfway through your response already. So when you give that strong first statement, not only do you start off strong, but it helps develop and set up the rest of your response for your 2-minute delivery. Number 6, evoke the senses with vivid descriptions. Remember, you want to make your part 2 speaking come alive. Not only part 2, part 1 and 3 as well. Your responses to the questions. You want to make your responses evoke the senses. That is, you want the examiner to experience fully what you're talking about. And here are 4 steps to take to do that. So 1, yourself. Imagine yourself in the scene that you're talking about. So in our case, in the last case we were talking about, at the Bolshoi, at the Metropolitan Theater, watching the ballet performance of the Nutcracker, you want to imagine yourself there again and retell what was happening while you were there. Use vivid verbs, especially verbs and nouns. But vivid verbs like dazzle, right? The crowd was dazzled by the ballet dancers, the performance of the ballet dancers. Or amaze. You want to use these very high energy words to energize your own speech. And this helps to make your experience come alive for the IELTS examiner. And the more they're able to understand you and what you're trying to communicate, the higher your score is going to be. Use only words that help paint the picture. I always ask my students to think of each question as a blank piece of paper. And you have to fill in the background, the contours, the shapes, the sizes, the colors. You want to turn that blank sheet of paper into an artwork. And you do that with your words. And the more that you make it come alive, the more enjoyable it's going to be for everyone, especially the IELTS examiner, and more enjoyable for them to give you a higher score because you're so expressive and you're able to show a range of vocabulary, which is a key part of your grade, and also to be able to answer the question fully. And finally, you want to bring the examiner along with you in the stories that you're telling. So each question that they give you, you want to be able to make it come alive for them and to bring them along with you in your story. And the more that they are able to, again, understand what you're saying and how you express that, the higher your score is going to be. So evoke the senses with vivid descriptions. So let's now take a look at some examples, and I want you to help participate. So here we have a picture, and I want someone to give a vivid description of this picture. Who can give us a vivid description of this picture? Who can give a vivid description of the picture? Someone want to volunteer? Anyone? Take a look at the picture there, and who can give a vivid description of what we see in the picture? Imagine yourself there. How would you describe this picture? Okay, so Okay, so Christopher says the gargantuan hot air balloons. What color are those hot air balloons? Flew majestically above a picturesque landscape. Uh-huh. And what was that landscape like? What was part of that landscape? Let's see. The gargantuan hot air balloons flew majestically above a picturesque landscape of earthly green and misty blue. Uh, yeah, you can see the mist of the blue there and the green mixing together in the colors there. Um, yeah, gargantuan or huge red balloons floating effortlessly above the clouds. As Christopher calls it, the earthly green and misty blue clouds. Um, so this is an example of using vivid descriptions to make come alive what you are seeing yourself. Because you don't have any pictures, there's no visual aids there when you're there with the IELTS examiner. So you need to be able to imagine yourself the scene, and so you can use that to describe it to the IELTS examiner. All right, we have another example here as well. Let's look at the next picture. All right, so take a good look at this picture as well. And how would you describe this picture? How would you describe this picture? Anyone? What do you see here in this picture? What if you had to describe this picture to an IELTS examiner? What would you say? Well, as you can see here in the center of our picture, we have a waterfall, right? And what else? We have the sun peeking through the branches here, of like a canopy, right? This is like a canopy effect here. You got the sun peeking through the canopy of the tree limbs, through the golden leaves here, um, and then you have this pool of water here. Um, what color is that water? What color is that water? All right, someone says one of the most wonderful waterfalls in the world. That's from Glavette. Um, okay, definitely a waterfall. Um, all right, and Pamela says the place was so breathtaking, like you're in a paradise, and the gushing water from the falls is extremely cold. All right, so now you're adding some temperature. Everyone can relate to cold or to hot and feel that, and to think about the cold water splashing down from a waterfall. So that's great, Pamela and Glavette. Christopher, let's see. The flowing waterfall poured into the lake, adding to its aquamarine shade as it basked underneath a pale yellow light, piercing through the canopy of orange-leafed trees reminiscent of autumn. Wow, that's like a poet here. Um, but it captures exactly what you see here in the picture. So the the goal here is to remind you to be as vivid as possible, add as many details as possible in your responses, whether it's on the speaking test or the writing test. Make sure that you give details. Don't just say, oh, it was a waterfall. No, like Pamela was saying, gushing water flowing. It was cold. Christopher says a canopy of trees, orange leafed trees. Eleanor, the flowing waterfall became one of the flowing with emerald water while the warm rays of the sunlight shone through the orange leaves, which seemed to enhance its warmth. Okay. So yeah, adding temperature, adding feelings. This is a good way of using vivid descriptions in your responses on the IELTS exam. And you're also showing your range of vocabulary using these vivid expressions. Also, this is a chance for you to show your grammar structures, different grammar structures as well. All of these touch on parts of the criteria, or the grading criteria for the IELTS speaking test. So thanks everyone for participating in in describing these pictures here. You get the idea that you want to give vivid, rich details on the exam. Okay. All right here. Number 7, ad lib if you have no idea. All right, so ad lib. This is a Latin phrase, basically meaning speaking spontaneously or spontaneous. This is something that actors and actresses are very familiar with. They also have to know these lines, right? They have to remember the script that they're given for their performance, whether it's on a play, in a movie, in a small screen on TV, or in a big screen in the theater. Actors and actresses are called upon to remember all of these lines for these different scenes that they're shooting as part of the production. Well, sometimes you forget those lines and you're like, what can I say? The camera is rolling, the lights are on. What do I do? Well, you can ad lib, and essentially you can make it up. That's right. If you have no idea of what to say, and sometimes I've heard this from students, what if I don't know what to say, teacher? Well, you can make it up. There's no way of determining what the questions are going to be on the exam. You try to prepare as much as possible, as broadly as possible for the different topics that they may ask you. But there may be some things that you have no idea. I remember one time doing a practice on the that they asked you about plants. Plants. Well, most people don't think about plants during much of their day. So how could you answer about plants? Well, as we say here, let's look at these 4 steps. You can start with the rule of 2s, that is the 2 ideas. And you can always go with the first thought, the first thing that comes into your head, and start making your case. Practice the IELTS topics in advance and draw on your own personal experience to answer the ad lib or answer questions using ad lib. So don't be afraid of using your own ideas, the first things that come to mind when you're trying to answer the questions on the IELTS speaking test. There's no one who's fact checking or going to say, well, that they don't know the facts about this, or they didn't study that right, or something. No, As long as it's reasonable and relevant to the question that they ask you, then it's okay. There's no one fact checking you. So be free to say what you want to say in answers to questions. All right. Remember, it's only an IELTS speaking exam. It's a snapshot in time of your English speaking skills. The IELTS examiner is more concerned with how you say your answer than actually what your answer is. So don't worry if you don't know what to say. You can always make it up. And finally, build natural English fluency early and often. So as I started this presentation, and therefore we'll end with this point as well to emphasize that building natural English is the best thing you can do for IELTS success all across the test, not just in the IELTS speaking section. And there's 4 ways that you can build natural English while you are in your IELTS preparation time. So first, work with a strong English speaker or an English instructor. Now, this may require you to spend money yourself to do this. If you do not have anyone, a friend or something, or someone who is a good, strong English speaker, maybe they've lived a while in an English-speaking country. Maybe they haven't. I've met many non-native English speakers in countries that speak almost like a native speaker in their rhythm, intonation, the words, the vocabulary that they use. Find someone who has stronger English than you and work with them during this time of your English, of your IELTS preparation. Read English language publications as much as possible. Reading is fundamental. It should be a natural part of your IELTS preparation, not just for the reading section of the exam, but in general, the benefits of reading, building your vocabulary, looking at the different grammar structures, being familiar with the different topics in English. You get a really good exposure by reading extensively in English. Also, if possible, and of course now with COVID it's not as possible as it once was, but maybe you've already spent some time in an English-speaking country. I always say to my students that the ultimate step in learning a language is actually going to the country where they speak it. That's what my experience was with Spanish. Studying in Spain and then in Mexico and then in South America, in Peru and Colombia. Learning the language is it's so important to be able to actually be in the country where they speak it. As I said, I know that's almost virtually impossible right now, but there's other ways that you can be in touch by reading and working with strong English speakers. And number 4, listen to English language radio or television or movies, videos. So there are ways to be in touch with the English language, to expose yourself as much as possible to English during your IELTS preparation time. And as you know, you're planning to work eventually in the U.S., English-speaking country. You're going to need to develop these skills to become more advanced in English anyway. So you might as well start now and building that habit of being in contact with the language. So natural English, the key to IELTS success. Working with a strong English speaker. It helps you to build natural English, to be more relaxed when you're speaking and writing for sure. use idioms, collocations, and phrasal verbs easily, and also to ultimately boost your exam confidence. So let's go ahead and review these 8 best tips for the high IELTS speaking score. Number 1, we talked about to prepare and follow a study plan. Number 2, manage your time wisely. Number 3, improve your vocabulary. Number 4, practice respecting the test time limits. Number 5, use complex grammar structures. I've got the wrong slide here. Let's see. That's my mistake. Doesn't look like it's working here. Let's see. All right. Let's go back here. My mistake. Okay. So, the 8 tips for the high IELTS speaking score is to be direct. There we go. Manage your time wisely. To enhance your 3 IELTS vocabularies that we spoke about before, the regular vocabulary, the collocations, idioms, and phrasals, and the topic vocabulary. Practice the 2-minute drill. Take full advantage of the 1-minute preparation time in part 2. Evoke the senses with vivid descriptions. Ad-lib. If you have no idea of what to say, you can always make it up. And finally, work with a strong English speaker, i.e., build up natural English. All right, so that will do it for our presentation for today. 8 tips for high IELTS speaking score. Does anyone have any final questions of what we've discussed about today, or a question about the IELTS speaking test before we go? No? Was everyone able to download the handout? I see Pamela says she couldn't download the handout. It's there. I'm not sure why you're not able to download it, but I'll note it down and see if I can send it to you. Was everyone able to download the handout? But I need to update it. The last part there. Any questions? No questions? Yes, yes. Okay. So others were able to download it, it seems, but if Pamela, you're not able to download it, I'll have to send it to you. Okay, well, thank you very much for attending today, and continue to improve both your IELTS and your English skills. Stay tuned for more presentations to help you in each part of the IELTS speaking test. We have webinars planned to give more tips like these in each part of the IELTS exam. So stay tuned for those. Thanks for attending today, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you very much.